Greetings, listeners, and thank you for joining me once again as we celebrate stories and storytelling in all their forms and the bards and artists who bring them all to life. I am the Tale Collector and your host, Erica Adams. I swear, to this day, the irony of where I learned of this movie makes me smile. Years ago, I was a student in the vet technology program at the Duluth Business University. During a break in between attending to the resident dogs and cats one evening, I was browsing through some random YouTube videos, mainly ones involving cartoon characters transforming into animals or vice versa, just because I felt like it. At one point, I came upon a 50-second clip from a fairly old-looking anime film. It depicted a little human girl changing into a cat, or rather, a cat person, with an older human boy falling backwards in horror at the spectacle. After the girl marvels at her new form, she laughs at the boy as she points out the same thing is happening to him. Sure enough, he too develops feline features before promptly passing out from the shock. I watched with a mixture of fascination and bemusement as the clip ended with two adult cat-like figures looking on as the cat girl prances with glee on all fours while the cat boy lay on his back, completely out cold. The $70 price tag on Amazon was a strong indicator of how rare this film is. Back then, I had nothing but that one clip and a few reviews to go on when deciding whether or not to buy it. But in the end, it was a gamble that paid off wonderfully. Prepare to get Catnapped, released June 10th, 1995, and recommended for viewers 7 and up. The family dog, Papa Doll, has been missing for days and days, but the reactions of his two young owners couldn't be more different. The hyper and overly imaginative Miko is beside herself, thinking he was abducted by aliens, while her cold and ill-tempered older brother, Torias, couldn't care less. In reality, however, Papa Doll isn't even in the children's dimension anymore. This is revealed by 3 feline scientists: the cantankerous Henoji, the easygoing Sudaboke, and the enthusiastic Hoi Hoi, who whisked the siblings away to Bonapal Wit, a world inhabited by anthropomorphic cats capable of working powerful magic. There, Torias and Miko learn that Papa Doll was brought there by Dodo, the demented servant of the tyrannical Princess Bubarina, who terrorizes her subjects with her Midas-like ability to turn anyone and anything she touches into a balloon. Moreover, having been overexposed to the supernatural light of this world's sun, Papa Doll has now mutated into a giant rampaging monster, who Bubarina intends to use in her ultimate plan to solidify her rule over Bonapal Wit forever. And if that's not enough, the sunlight has now transformed the 2 human children into cats themselves, and should the sun shine on them for more than a day, they will become monsters as well, a dilemma made all the more serious when Miko is taken hostage and imprisoned in Bubarina's palace. And so, at the behest of the scientific trio, Master Sandata, the good wizard, and the tomboyish fighter Choo-Choo, Torias must change his selfish ways and pluck up his courage in order to rescue his sister, break the spell upon his dog, and thwart Bubarina's plot before the next sunrise. As I'm sure you've gathered, this is one bizarre movie, even by anime standards. In fact, one reason I initially hesitated to buy it was because its writer and director, Takashi Nakamura, was also an animation director for the famed 1988 cyberpunk anime film, Akira. At the time, that was a bit too much for me in the disturbing and gross body horror department. However, had I given in to that fear, I wouldn't be talking about this movie now. To make a more apt comparison, in terms of character design, I often find myself reminded of another anime cat film, The Cat Returns. The felines in that story, though they speak and think like humans, are made to look and feel natural, retaining the physiology of ordinary cats. The ones in Catnapped, on the other hand, are humanoid in a more literal sense, from the elaborate clothes and hairstyles to their paws functioning more like hands with claws. Seriously, just take a human face, stick a pair of cat ears and a nose on it, and voila! But what really rounds out the outlandishness is the primary setting, Bonapal Wit. The term eye candy is brought to a whole new level here, an almost psychedelic blend of buttery yellows, bubblegum pinks, dreamsicle oranges, and rich blueberry indigos. What's more, the place looks like a playpen, a carnival, and a toy store all rolled into one. The building block landscape, the clockwork machines, there's even one responsible for shooting the sun into the sky like a firework every morning. Genius. And the architecture that looks like it was built from preschoolers' drawings rather than blueprints. Speaking of artwork, the rampant cat-themed statues, paintings, and, of course, balloons can admittedly be a bit much at times, especially when the rendered felines in question have the type of fast-food animatronic smiles that make the Cheshire Cat look stable. But don't worry, these are mainly for backdrop purposes. Plus, though technically real and not a work of art, one of the most beautifully designed cats in the entire movie, in my opinion, is the sleeping cat, the colossal two-headed beast on top of which the whole of Bonaparte wit rests, much like the world turtle from Hindu and Chinese mythology. Overall, this playful and vibrant aesthetic, accompanied by a particularly catchy parade-like theme song, crafts for us a domain positively brimming with the promise of fun and adventure. That being said, there are some narrative elements that I think could have done with a little bit more polish. For example, there's a reference to what seems to be a Romeo and Juliet-esque tale of the doomed love between a cat and a mouse. The sequence where they are introduced is quite lovely. The female cat watching sadly as her beloved, a male mouse, leaves his cage to fly away heavenward, toting the full moon into the night sky. But there is no further elaboration upon this, and other than leading rather jarringly to some brief additional bickering between Torias and Choo-Choo, it is never brought up in any way again, diminishing the poignancy it seems to be striving for. And then there's Boobarina's take over the world scheme. Even for a film as absurd as this, almost nothing in her plan makes any sense whatsoever. Then again, she does treat her balloon ability, utterly silly in and of itself, like a cool superpower rather than a curse of being unable to touch anything without effectively losing it. So, yeah. In the end, I think all one can do is just chalk this all up to her demonstrable insanity and move on. There are some other inconsistencies, but I really don't want to spoil or harp on these too much. And it is possible that I'm missing something even after all the times I've watched this movie, so I'll just leave it up to you viewers to decide. But whatever this film may lack in logic, it makes up for with what I think is a very sincere moral about the ramifications of forgetting the good in one's past and letting the bad shape one's present and future. This is explored quite well through multiple characters and in multiple ways, some over the top, some internal and heartfelt. One of the more obvious examples is Papadal, whose transformation into a monster confuses him and muddles his recollection of his owners, exacerbated by his being neglected in the human world. Dodo, Choo-Choo's brother, has fallen prey to a curse that made him fall madly in love with Boobarina, rendering him a mindless drone that exists only to fulfill her wishes. Though this is only hinted at, Boobarina may once have been a good person, but was then spoiled rotten by her lavish and pampered upbringing. Where this idea really shines, though, is through Torias. Without spoiling anything, Torias epitomizes someone who has been disheartened by life's unfairness. Regardless of how minor that unfairness may be in the grand scheme of things, it is still enough to turn this once starry-eyed boy into a callous jerk who can only deal with it by either making others miserable in turn, or just running away. But sometimes there's nothing quite like the threat of magical curses and world destruction to make someone get their button gear and their priorities straight. In all seriousness, though, while some of these characters exhibit deplorable behavior, making us love to hate them, it's always reiterated that they have the potential to change for the better. There are those who take that opportunity when it comes, and there are others who refuse, preferring to wallow in their own misery or delight in the misery of those who can't fight back. Still, I think kids can take a great lesson out of this, that anyone mean and miserable should be reached out to rather than condemned, because maybe all that they are really looking for is a friend. It is possible that very young children might find this movie a bit intense and or creepy, and even older viewers who enjoy anime might see it as just a little too weird. But for anyone else, Catnapped is a whimsical, energetic romp with a highly creative story, full of entertaining characters, exciting visuals, and wild imagination. Give it a watch for yourself and let it brighten your mood so you can brighten other moods too, human and otherwise. Gather around next time for another tale you may have forgotten or have never heard before. Until then, listeners, may inspiration always find you.